Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today we are going to talk about percents of change. So you may have heard the terms such as an increase of 25% or a decrease of 50%. Well, let's show you what that means and how that works. So let's say we have an object that's 25 centimeters, right? We have an object that's 25 centimeters, so we're going to go from 25 centimeters to 36 centimeters. Suddenly it grows to 36 centimeters. We want to figure out how many percent that's changed from the original 25 centimeters to 36 centimeters. So first thing you do is you're going to, if it's an increase, because 25 centimeters to 36 centimeters is an increase, what you do is you take your increase of 36 centimeters minus the 25 centimeters, then you figure out 36 minus 25, that's a change of 11 centimeters, okay? We figured out the amount of centimeters has changed, now we want to figure out the percentage changed. What you do is you take your difference of the two quantities here, so you'll take that 11 centimeters, you'll put that over the original 25 centimeters. So yeah, put that over the original 25 centimeters. Well, centimeters will cancel out. You're just left with 11 over 25, which we know as a decimal is equal to 0.44. Which 0.44 is a decimal, that means that's 44%. So what you have is a change of 44%. You have a 44% increase. What you got here, you have a 44% increase from 25 centimeters to 36 centimeters. And yes, we will go over more, don't worry. We're not dumping you here. Alright, let's say you start out with $10. So you're going to go from $10 to $27, okay? So you go from $10 to $27. Well, once again, since we can clearly see it's an increase, because you're starting with 10, you're going up to 27. Since it's an increase from the original, you would take the new amount, the $27, minus the $10 minus the original, and your change in dollars, 27 minus 10, that's $17. So yes, you would get a change of $17. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take that change of $17, you're going to put that over the original amount of $10. So you take your change, put that over the original. Well, the dollar signs cancel out. You're just left with 17 over 10, which we know as a decimal is equal to 1.7. So as a decimal, it's 1.7. As a percent, it would be 170%. So of course, it's an increase. So we have 170% increase. So if you have $10 and you've gone to $27 from that, you've seen 170% increase in the amount of money you have. Okay. So we're going to go from 365 feet to 421 feet. Okay, so we've seen an increase, whatever, let's say you have a long wall in a building. You have a long wall in a building that's 365 feet long. You knock out another section of wall that's blocking it to make it one longer wall. You've gone up to 421 feet. I'm just using this as a story example. Well, if you've gone from 365 feet to 421 feet, that's definitely an increase. So what you got to do is take the new amount, the 421 feet, subtract 365 feet from that, and then you'll figure that out, you'll get your change. Let's figure out 421 minus 365. $56. So that's a change, that's an increase of 56 feet. Now that we figured out the difference, you're going to take that difference of 56 feet, you're going to put that over the original 365 feet. Well, of course, your feet cancel out. You're just left with 56 over 365. So now we just do that division. Let's get our decimal. Come on. All right, 56 divided by 365. Let's round that to, let's see, decimal. Let's round that to 2 decimal places. It's approximately equal to 0.15. So as a decimal, it's approximately equal to 0.15, which means as a percent, that's approximately equal to 15%. And it's an increase, so that's approximately a 15% increase. That's the answer you get. It's approximately a 15% increase. All right. Another fun one. Let's say you have $289 in your bank account. You're starting with $289 in your bank account. All of a sudden, you go up to $762. That's a pretty substantial jump in your bank account. Well, we can clearly see if you're going from 289 to 762, that's an increase. So since it's an increase, you take the new number, the second number, what you increased to, which would be the $762, you would subtract the original amount of 289 from that, and then you'll just come up with your answer. You'll come up with the amount of dollars that changed. So let's see, 762 minus 289, that's $473. So that is an increase of $473. So now we have found the amount of dollars that's increased. We need to take that dollar amount, that $473, we need to divide that by the original amount of $289. Well, of course, your dollars will cancel out. You'll be left with 473 over 289. Now we just got to work out that division. What is 473 over 289? Let's find that out. 473 divided by 289. As a decimal, that's approximately 1.64. You get approximately 1.64. That's as a decimal, which means as a percent, that would be approximately 164%. That'd be approximately 164%, and of course it's an increase. So your bank account has seen an approximately 164% increase in money, which that would be nice. If we could all increase our bank accounts by 164%, that'd be nice, I'm sure. But we're about to get into some decreasing problems. So let's say you start out with 68 minutes. You're going from 68 minutes to complete an assignment, and now you're down to 51 minutes. So you started with 68 minutes to complete an assignment, you're now down to 51 minutes. We can clearly see from 68 minutes to 51 minutes, that's a decrease. So what you got to do if it's a decrease, you take the original amount of 68 minutes, you'll take your original amount, then you'll subtract the new amount from that, the 51 minutes, and the answer you'll get, 68 minus 51, well, that'd be 17. You decrease by 17 minutes. What you'll still do, though, you'll take that amount of minutes you've changed, you'll take the 17 minutes out of that 68 minutes, you take it out of the original amount. Well, your minutes cancel, you're left with 17/68, which I can tell you that reduces to 1/4, which would be 0.25. You'll get 0.25 as a decimal, which means that's going to be equal to, as a percent, that'd be 25%. But this time it's a decrease, so you would have a 25% decrease. So yes, from 68 minutes to 51 minutes, that's a 25% decrease. All right. So let's see. So let's say we have a big bag of cement that's, a big bag of dog food. So they initially sold this bag of dog food in a 50-pound quantity. Well, now they're charging you the same price, but you only are getting 44 pounds instead of 50 pounds. Well, that's definitely a decrease. And isn't that the truth anymore with the way things are going? You still pay the same amount for less, or actually you pay more for less sometimes. But let's say this bag of dog food went from 50 pounds to 44 pounds, what they're giving you now when you buy it. Well, since it's a decrease, you're going to take the original, which would be the 50 pounds. You're going to subtract the new amount, the 44 pounds, from it. So 50 minus 44, well, that's 6. That is a difference of 6 pounds. Okay, so now that you found the difference in the pounds, you're going to take that difference, that's 6 pounds. You're going to divide that by the original amount. That'd be 6 pounds out of 50 pounds. Well, your pounds cancel out. You're just left with 6 over 50, which as a decimal I can tell you is 0.12, which as a percent means that's 12%. That's a change of 12%. In this case, it's a decrease. So you've seen a 12% decrease in that same bag of dog food that you're in that bag of dog food that you used to get 50 pounds for a certain dollar amount, now you're only getting 44 pounds for that same dollar amount. You've seen a 12% decrease in the value of it. So, and I'm sure we're seeing that with more than just dog food nowadays. We're seeing that with bags of chips, which if you have a 50-pound bag of chips, I doubt anyone does. Okay, let's say your bank account starts with $135. You drop down to $120. So let's say, yeah, you went to the gas station, bought some gas, you dropped down to $120 in your bank account. Well, we can clearly see from 135 to 120, that's a decrease. So if it's a decrease, again, take your original amount, in this case that'd be $135. You would subtract the new amount from it, which would be $120. So you get 135 minus 120, well, that's $15. So that's a change of $15. Now that you got your change in dollars, you're going to take that amount of change, you're going to divide that by the original value of 135, which we know the dollar signs will cancel out. You're left with 15 over 135. So let's go ahead and take that value, 15 divided by 135. It's approximately equal to 0.11, which we know 0.11 as a percent, that's approximately 11%. So we will see, in this case, a decrease of about 11% from the original. So you have decreased your bank account by 11%. Okay. So I think we've seen enough with decreasing, increasing, well, by dollar amounts and lengths. Now let's do this a little bit differently. Let's say I want to increase $500 by 20%. So I have $500, I seek to increase that by 20%. In these situations, instead of, if you don't know what the new dollar amount is, but they give you a percent it increases by, what you have to do is you take the amount they gave you, that in this case the $500, you're going to multiply that by 20%. You want to find 20% of 500 because you're going to increase $500 by 20% of 500. So first you need to find what is 20% of 500. Well, that would equal $500 times 0.2 because that's 20%. So let's go ahead and do 500 times 0.2. 500 times 0.2, that's 100. So you found out what you need to increase it by. You're going to increase it by $100. So now all you got to do is take that $100, add it to the original amount, and we know 100 plus 500, well, that's 600. So if you increase that $500 by 20%, you'll end up with $600. All right. Increase 60 miles per hour by 15%. Alright, so they're looking to increase the 60 mile per hour speed limit in whatever state this is on a major highway going 60 miles per hour. The legislators considering increasing that 60 mile per hour speed limit by 15%. Well, it's going to be an increase of 15%. What you got to do again, take your original quantity, that's 60 miles per hour, you'll multiply that by 15% because you're going to increase that by 15% of 60 miles per hour. So that would be equal to 60 miles per hour times 15% as a decimal is 0.15. Alright. Well, we need to figure out what 60 times 0.15 is. 60 times 0.15, that'd be 9. That would be 9 miles per hour. So that's 15% of 60 is 9 miles per hour. Now you need to increase that 60 miles per hour by that much. So what you'll do is you'll take your 9 miles per hour, you'll add that to 60 miles per hour. And of course 9 plus 60, that's 69 miles per hour. That would be the new speed limit. Which, since it's a speed limit, we can say that'd be approximately 70 miles per hour. Because you'll never see a speed limit sign posted for 69 miles per hour. It goes in increments of 5s and 10s. So if the speed limit on the highway increased by 15% from 60 miles per hour, it would go up to 70 miles per hour. So that's something good to know. Let's say, we have an increase increase 48 inches by 30%. So let's say you have a child at home. They're 48 inches tall, but over the summer they grew 30%. They finally hit a growth spurt. They've grown by 38%. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that original amount, that 48 inches, you're going to find 30% of that 48 inches, because that's what you need to increase it by. Well, we know that's going to be the same as 48 inches times 30% is 0.3. So now we just need to do 48 inches times 0.3. That'd be 14.4 inches. Okay, so 30% of 48 inches is 14.4 inches. So now that's the change. We need to add the change to the original amount. So add your 14.4 inches to that 48 inches, and you would get 62.4 inches, which that would be your that would be what that would be from an increase. So you have, if you increase 48 inches by 30%, that child grew to 62.4 inches, which would be over 5 feet. That'd be remarkable growth over the summer, going from just 4 feet to over 5 feet. So that's an example of an increase. Okay, here's a good one for economy. let's say we're going to decrease our $1,200 spending every month. We'd like to decrease that by 50%. So we need to buckle down. We need to take our $1,200 that we spend every month on, whether it's fast food or entertainment, what have you, we need to decrease that by 50%. Well, again, this is a change of 50%, so just like you would with an increase, you'll take the $1,200, you'll multiply that by 50%, which we want to decrease this by 50% of 1,200, which we know, well, that'd be 1,200 times, if we want to do 50% as a decimal, that's 0.5, which I can tell you half of 1,200 is $600. So now we found our change of $600. We need to take that away from the original. We need to, since it's a decrease, we need to do the original minus the change. And then 1,200 minus 600, well, that's $600. So if you decrease that $1,200 by 50%, you're only going to be spending $600 every month. Which, in the times we live in now, might be useful for us to think about tightening up our belt and our spending, but to each their own on that one. Okay, so, you know, while we're talking about spending, I'm just going to go off tangent for a minute, but it does relate. If you go back to my Basic Math 2 playlist, I talk all about credit cards and the math behind them and how much you're really paying on your credit card and you make a minimum payment. Let's just say the results would astound you. Let's just say that they would. So I would recommend everybody go back to my Basic Math 2 playlist and watch about credit cards, because that's something to really think about spending on. But I'm going to get back on track. So anyway, let's say somebody, well, I weigh 235 pounds. I'll throw that out there. I want to decrease my weight. I should decrease my weight by about, no, that's not realistic. By 35%. That would be a good realistic weight goal for me. So I'm going to decrease my weight of 235 pounds by 35%, okay? Well, I still need to take my original number, that 235 pounds. I need to multiply that by 35% because I need to decrease my weight by 35% of that 235 pounds. Which, as we know, that's the same as multiplying that 235 pounds. That 35% as a decimal is 0.35. So the answer to what 35% of 235 pounds is, let's just go ahead and do that the multiplication. 235 times 0.35, 82.25 pounds. That'd be 82.25 pounds. So that's the amount I need to take off, is 82.25 pounds. So now, since this is a decrease, we're going to do the original weight first, minus the change of 82.25 pounds, and then that should get me to my dream weight. So let's go ahead and do that math real quick. At 235, whoops, not times, 235 minus 82.25, Yep, that would get me down to 152.75 pounds. So if I decrease my weight by 35%, I would be dropped down to 152.75 pounds, which is about where I should be. So you could argue by this I'm 35% overweight, which is not a good thing, but it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not good either. But okay, so basically with these percents of change, if you're increasing or decreasing, let's say you know what the first number is, your original number, and you know what it's increasing to or decreasing to, the second number, you just figure out the difference between the two numbers and put that difference over your original. And then what happens is you'll get your percent of either increase or decrease. Now, if you want to, like we did here, decrease by percent, you take that percent, multiply it by the original number, and then you'll get your amount of change. Then if it's a decrease, you'll take the original minus the amount of change and you'll get what it should be. If I were to I wouldn't do this. If, let's say, I wanted to increase my weight from 235 by 35%, I would still figure out what my what the change is, what the percentage of 235 is, but instead of subtracting that from the original, I would add it to the original and I would get a bigger number. So that's all there really is to percents of change. It's easy enough to understand, but this is the last lesson for the percents and the ratios and proportions and decimals and fractions unit. Next lesson, we're going to move on to functions and equations of lines and slope and all that type of stuff. So I hope everybody has a good night. Take care.